My mom died and left everything to my siblings. The house, the car, even the money. And me? I got a single envelope with one sentence inside. When the lawyer read it out loud, my entire family went silent.
My name is Thea Bennett. I'm 31 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my mother died on an operating table. 3 days before the surgery, she updated her will. At the reading, everything was divided neatly, almost too neatly. My sister got the house, my brother got the car, the church received the savings, and me? I got a sealed envelope. Just one. No explanation, no money, no property. Just paper. The lawyer hesitated when he reached my name, like even he wasn't sure how this would land. My siblings exchanged looks, half curiosity, half satisfaction. They thought they already understood the outcome. I wasn't meant to open it there, but I did. And whatever my mother intended with that envelope, it didn't break me. It did the opposite. I grew up in a house where I never quite belonged. Not in an obvious way. No screaming fights, no dramatic scenes. It was quieter than that. More subtle. Like being slowly erased while still standing in the room. My mother made sure I felt different. My sister made sure I remembered it. And my brother, he just followed along. Family photos told the story best. My sister always front and center, glowing. My brother beside her, confident and relaxed. My mother just behind them, proud. And me, sometimes I was at the edge, sometimes I wasn't there at all. There wasn't enough space, my mother would say casually, but there was always space for everyone else. The last time I spoke to her was 4 months before she died. She called to remind me about my sister's anniversary dinner, black tie, of course, and added that I shouldn't bother showing up if I was going to dress the same as always. So I told her I wouldn't come at all. Her response? Good. One less chair to think about. That was the end of the conversation, and the end of us. When the lawyer called to tell me she was gone, I didn't cry. I didn't leave work early, I didn't collapse or call anyone. I finished my tasks, sent my emails, and went home like any other day. Because the truth is, I had already lost my mother years ago. Her death just made it official. Still, when he mentioned the will, something shifted. He used one word that stuck with me. Unconventional. That word sat in my mind like an unanswered question, and questions have always had a way of pulling me back into places I've tried to leave. So, when Wednesday came, I showed up. Not for closure, not for grief, but because, for once, I wasn't going to let them write the story without me in the room. I walked into that office knowing exactly who they thought I was. The outsider, the afterthought, the one who didn't belong. But what I didn't know was this. By the time I walked out, everything they believed about me and everything I believed about myself was about to change. Because that envelope, it didn't just hold a sentence, it held a truth my family had buried for 31 years. The room was already full when I stepped inside. My sister sat at the far end of the table, dressed in black like she was attending a performance instead of a will reading. My brother leaned back in his chair, bored, like this was just another obligation he couldn't wait to leave. A few others were there too, people who had always been part of my mother's world. I took the empty seat closest to the door. Of course I did. That had always been my place, closest to the exit. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began reading. His voice was steady, practiced. To my eldest daughter I leave the family home.
No surprise there. My sister didn't even react, just a small, satisfied shift in posture. To my son, I leave the vehicle and all remaining personal property. My brother smirked like he'd just won something. Then came the church, my mother's favorite cause, the savings account, neatly handed over. Everything accounted for, everything predictable. Then the lawyer paused. He looked at me, and to my daughter Thea, this envelope. That was it. No explanation, no extra words, just this envelope. My sister let out a quiet laugh. "Well," she said, folding her arms, "that sounds about right." My brother grinned. "Kind of poetic, honestly." I didn't respond. I just took the envelope from the lawyer's hand. It was light, too light, like whatever was inside had no weight at all. "You're going to open it, right?" my sister pressed. The lawyer cleared his throat. "You're not required to open it here. You can—" "I'll open it." I didn't let him finish. If my mother had something to say, something she waited until the very end to write, I wasn't going to read it alone. I wanted witnesses. The paper inside was folded once. That was it. No pages, no explanation, no long message. Just one sentence. I read it silently. Then I read it again. My expression didn't change, but something inside me shifted, like a lock clicking open after years of pressure. The room waited. My sister leaned forward. "Well?" I looked at the lawyer and handed him the paper. "Read it out loud." He hesitated, just for a second. Then he read it. "Thea is not Robert Bennett's daughter. Her biological father is Douglas Prescott." Silence. Complete silence. It stretched so long it felt like the air itself had frozen. My brother stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "That's not possible." My sister's face drained of color, her confidence cracking for the first time since I walked in. The others? Shock, confusion, something heavier, like a truth they didn't want but couldn't deny. And me? I stayed still, because suddenly everything made sense. Every look, every comment, every moment I felt like I didn't belong. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't too sensitive. I was never one of them. Not really. "That's why," I said quietly. No one interrupted. "That's why I never fit." My sister recovered first. "This changes everything," she snapped. "She's not even—" "The will stands," the lawyer cut in firmly. "She was named. The distribution is final." I picked up the envelope again, sliding it into my bag. My hands were steady now, stronger than they had ever been. "You got the house," I said, looking at my sister. "You got the car," I told my brother. Then I paused. "And I got the truth." I stood up, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the smallest person in the room. But what none of them realized yet, that one sentence wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something that would change everything they thought they had won. The silence followed me out of that room. No one stopped me. No one called my name. For once, I wasn't being dismissed. I was being watched, and that was new. By the time I reached my car, my hands were no longer steady. Not shaking exactly, just unfamiliar, like they belonged to someone standing at the edge of a completely different life. I sat behind the wheel, closed the door, and stared straight ahead. Douglas Prescott. I repeated the name in my head, like it might unlock something instantly, but it didn't. It just lingered. That night, I sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop open. The same small apartment, the same quiet space I'd built on my own. But it didn't feel the same anymore.
because now there was a question sitting in the middle of it. Who was I really? I typed the name into the search bar. Douglas Prescott. The results came up instantly. Judge, long-serving, respected, influential, the kind of man people wrote about with admiration even after he was gone. 30 years on the bench, known for fairness, discipline, integrity, a man who built a legacy. I clicked through articles, photos, public records, and then I saw his face. I froze. It wasn't just resemblance, it was recognition, the kind that doesn't need explanation. The eyes, same shape, same intensity. The way his expression held steady, like he was always measuring the world carefully before responding. Even the structure of his face. It was like looking at a version of myself I had never been allowed to see. I leaned back in my chair slowly. For 31 years, I had lived in a house where I didn't look like anyone, where I was treated like an outsider. And now, here he was, a stranger, and yet the first person who ever looked like me. Why? I whispered out loud. Not to him, to her. Why hide this? Why carry it for decades, only to reveal it like this, in a room full of people, like a final strike? But the more I thought about it, the more something didn't add up. If this was meant to hurt me, why did it feel like clarity instead? The next morning, my phone rang. It was the lawyer. His voice was different this time, less formal, more deliberate. "Thea," he said, "there's something you need to know." I didn't speak. I just listened. Douglas Prescott established a trust before he passed. A portion of it was set aside for a biological child he believed existed but could never locate. My grip tightened around the phone. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he replied carefully, "that someone has been looking for you for years." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "You're telling me," slowly, "while my mother was hiding this from me, he may have been trying to find you," the lawyer finished. I closed my eyes. For a moment, everything collided. The past, the silence, the distance, all of it rearranging itself into something I hadn't expected. This wasn't just a secret, it was a decision, a choice my mother had made every single day. And now, that choice was no longer hers to control. I looked back at the screen, at the man I had never met, at the life that had been kept just out of reach, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I felt like something had been taken. Because if someone had really been searching for me all those years, then the next question wasn't who I was, it was what else had been hidden from me, and why now it was finally coming to light. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over, the envelope, the sentence, the name. And one thought kept cutting through all of it. Someone had been looking for me. By morning, the story had already started spreading, not through announcements, not officially, but in the way small communities work. Quiet conversations, lingering looks, messages passed from one person to another. At work, people were different. Not rude, not distant, just aware. My coworker placed a coffee on my desk without asking. My manager stopped by and told me his door was open if I needed anything. No one said it out loud, but they all knew. And then my phone rang. My sister. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. She didn't bother with greetings. "I hope you're not taking this seriously," she said, her tone sharp. "Taking what seriously?" I replied. "That letter," she snapped. "Mom wasn't thinking clearly. You can't just build a whole story around one sentence." I let her talk, let her fill the silence. "She wrote it 3 days before surgery. People say things when they're scared." She rewrote her entire will, I said calmly. That doesn't sound confused to me. There was a pause. Then her voice hardened. You're not going to go after money that isn't yours. There it was. Not concern, not confusion, money. I haven't chased anything, but I'm not going to pretend I didn't hear what was written. You've always done this, she shot back, made everything about you. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I'm not making anything about me, I said quietly. For once, I'm just paying attention. She hung up. 20 minutes later, my brother texted, 3 messages in a row. If you go after this, we'll fight it. We'll challenge the will. Think carefully. I looked at the screen for a long moment. Then I locked my phone. So that was it. The line had been drawn. Not by me, by them. That evening, there was a knock at my door. I already knew who it was before I opened it. My sister stood there, a folder in her hand, her husband just behind her, silent but watching. We need to settle this, she said, stepping inside without waiting. She placed the document on my kitchen counter. Sign it. I picked it up. Legal language. Messy. Rushed. A statement that I had no claim to the family, that I wasn't entitled to anything, that I would walk away completely. I read it twice. Then I set it back down. You want me to erase myself? I asked. It's cleaner this way, her husband said. Cleaner. I looked at her. Really looked at her this time, not as my sister, but as someone protecting something. No, I said simply. Her expression tightened. If you don't sign, she said coldly, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you're trying to do. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step back. Do you mean the truth? I replied. She didn't answer. She just turned and walked out. I closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned against it for a moment. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from clarity. For 31 years, I had been pushed aside, silenced, ignored, dismissed. Not anymore. Because whatever my mother intended with that letter, she didn't just expose a secret, she changed the balance. And now, everyone could feel it. But what none of them expected was that the truth they tried to bury was about to open a door worth more than everything they had just inherited.
10 days. That's how long it took for everything to change. 10 days of going to work like nothing was happening. 10 days of pretending my life wasn't quietly shifting beneath my feet. And then, the call came. I was sitting in my car when my phone rang. I already knew who it was. The lawyer. The results are in, he said. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. 99.98% match, he continued. You are the biological daughter of Douglas Prescott. For a moment, the world went completely still. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just quiet. Because deep down, I think I already knew. There's more, he added. Of course there was. A trust was set up in his estate for a child he believed existed but couldn't find. My fingers tightened around the phone. And now? I asked. Now it's yours. I didn't react right away. Didn't celebrate. Didn't cry. I just listened as he explained the details. Property, assets, investments. A life. A legacy. Something that had been waiting for me, without me even knowing it existed. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, thinking about everything my mother had tried to do, the way she planned it, the envelope, the room, the audience. She thought she was leaving me with nothing, but she wasn't. She left me with the one thing she could never control, the truth. And the truth? It was worth more than anything she gave the others. A few days later, I stood on a piece of land I had never seen before. Open sky, quiet air, space that felt Mine. Not borrowed, not tolerated. Mine. A woman stood waiting for me on the porch of a small house. She looked at me for a long moment before smiling. "You have his eyes," she said softly. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. She stepped forward, took my hands gently, and said something I had never heard before. "Welcome home." And just like that, something inside me settled. Not because everything was perfect, not because the past disappeared, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't standing on the outside anymore. I had a place, a name, a truth that belonged to me. Back in town, things changed quickly. The same people who once looked through me now looked at me differently. Not better, just clearly. My sister called once more. This time, her voice was softer, careful. She needed help. Money. I listened, let her finish. Then I said the only thing that made sense. "You told me I wasn't family." A pause. "I'm just respecting that." I ended the call. Not angry, not bitter, just done. Because this was never about revenge. It wasn't even about money. It was about finally understanding something I had spent 31 years questioning. Why I never belonged. Now I knew. And the truth? It didn't destroy me. It freed me. Sometimes the thing meant to break you becomes the very thing that rebuilds your life in a way no one saw coming.